All right, so today we're going to help you crush that process metallurgist job interview.
Yeah, it's one thing to, know your metals and alloys, but articulating that in an interview, that's a whole other challenge.
Oh yeah, for sure. It can be nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But lucky for us, we've got these awesome RoleCatcher guides.
Exactly. They've got everything you need, like career overviews, interview prep tips, even how to use their AI to your advantage.
Yeah, it's really like having a secret weapon, right?
Definitely.
So we've got our stack right here, ready to pull out all the best stuff. We're kind of like your interview coaches for today.
That's right. We'll break down those tough questions, give you some strategies, and help you come up with responses that really impress.
So before we get to those interview questions, let's talk about what a process metallurgist actually does day to day.
Okay, so think of it as like transforming raw materials, things like copper, nickel, and iron ores, into valuable metals.
So it's all about optimizing those processes for efficiency, quality, and, sustainability too, right?
You got it. And speaking of different focuses, I noticed the RoleCatcher guide mentions other job titles like quarry engineer or chemical metallurgist.
Right. They're all basically the same thing.
Yeah, that's a good observation. The core skills are pretty similar, but those little differences in titles can point to a specific area within the field.
Okay. So it's important to be aware of those nuances when you're job searching.
Definitely. Yeah. It can help you target your search a little better.
That makes sense. It's kind of like, I don't know, knowing the difference between a chef and a pastry chef, right?
Exactly. They both work with food, but their specialties are different.
All right. So are we ready to tackle some of these interview questions?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, great. So often interviews start with something like, what inspired you to pursue a career in process metallurgy?
Yeah, seems simple enough, right?
But it's also a chance to make a good first impression.
You got it. It's your opportunity to go beyond just generic answers like, I'm good at science or I like working with metals. The interviewer wants to see real passion.
I see. So the RoleCatcher Guide suggests sharing a specific story or experience that sparked your interest.
Right, exactly. Like, were you fascinated by a specific metal's properties or inspired by a lecture? Maybe you had a mentor who got you excited about it?
So adding that personal touch makes your answer more memorable.
Yeah.
And it helps you connect with the interviewer.
Exactly. And think about some possible follow-up questions too, like how has your interest evolved? Or what aspects of process metallurgy excite you the most? You got to be ready to elaborate.
Okay, noted. That makes sense. So what about this question? How do you ensure that the processing of metals meets quality and safety standards?
This one gets to the core of your technical skills and your dedication to those standards. They want to see that you get how important quality control and safety protocols are, in a field where precision is everything.
Right. So the RoleCatcher Guide says it's super important to give concrete examples rather than just saying, I follow the guidelines.
Yeah, exactly. Think back to specific times when you actually made sure quality and safety were top-notch. Did you implement a new testing procedure? Maybe identify and fix a potential hazard? Or even train colleagues on safety protocols? Those real examples really make a difference.
And those examples probably lead to more questions.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what challenges did you face? Or how did you know your actions were effective?
You got it. Always be ready to show off those problem-solving skills.
Awesome. I'm definitely learning a lot here.
Oh.
Okay, let's move on to question number 3. How do you stay up to date with advancements in metallurgical technologies and processes?
Okay, so this one's all about showing that you're committed to continuous learning, keeping ahead of the game in a field that's always changing.
Right, it's not enough to just know the basics anymore.
Exactly, you got to show you're actively learning and keeping up with the innovations.
And the RoleCatcher Guide suggests mentioning specific resources you use, like industry publications, conferences, or even online forums.
Yeah, and I take it even further and connect those resources to a time when you learned something new and then actually used it in your work. Like, did a journal article give you a new idea for an experiment? Did a conference presentation introduce you to a cool new technique?
Right. So sharing those specific examples really paints a picture of you as an engaged learner, someone who's not just passively absorbing information, but actually putting it into practice.
You got it. And don't forget about those potential follow-up questions. They might ask about emerging trends that interest you or how you see these advancements shaping the future of the field.
This is where I can really show off my passion and insights. So what's the next question?
All right, here's one that really gets to your analytical skills. How do you analyze and interpret data from metallurgical tests and experiments?
Oh, data analysis. That's a huge part of process metallurgy.
You got it. They want to see that you can go beyond just collecting data, that you can pull out meaningful insights and use them to make things better.
Right. It's about showing that you've mastered those data analysis tools and techniques, and that you can translate raw data into usable knowledge.
Exactly.
And RoleCatcher says to avoid vague answers, like just saying, I use software. We should actually outline our process, mentioning specific software or methods we're comfortable with.
Right. Walk them through your approach, like how do you start, what tests you use, how do you visualize the results?
Okay, so for example, I could say, I usually start by using software like Minitab to do statistical analysis, finding trends, correlations, and anything unusual. Then I combine those insights with my knowledge of the process to draw conclusions and make suggestions.
That's a solid answer. It shows you're methodical and that you can apply those statistical findings to real-world situations.
And that kind of answer opens up room for more discussion, right? Like they might ask for a specific example where your data analysis led to a process improvement. Or maybe they'll ask about the limitations of statistical analysis in this field.
Be prepared for that deeper dive, to really show off your critical thinking.
I'm feeling way more confident now. So what's next on our list of questions to conquer?
Okay, ready for question number 5. This one's about working with others. Like, how do you collaborate with other departments, like engineering and production, to make sure things run smoothly?
Teamwork. That's got to be key in process metallurgy. You can't just work in isolation, right?
Exactly. No one's an island. This question's all about seeing how you communicate, how you understand those interdepartmental dynamics, and how you handle those relationships, which can get a bit messy sometimes.
Right, I get it. So the RoleCatcher Guide says we should talk about specific examples of successful collaborations rather than just saying, I'm a team player. Right?
Yeah.
For sure. Think back to those times you really knocked it out of the park working with others. Did you lead a cross-functional team? Did you help smooth over a conflict? Or maybe you streamlined communication to make everything more efficient. Those real stories really make your answer strong.
And I'm guessing those stories will lead to more questions like, what challenges did you run into? Or what strategies worked best for building those relationships?
Exactly. Always be ready to dig into the details and show how you adapt and handle those interpersonal situations.
Okay, got it. Let's move on to question 6. How do you ensure that metallurgical processes are environmentally sustainable? Sustainability is a huge deal now, and it's only getting bigger.
It's not just a bonus anymore, it's a must-have for any industry. Process metallurgy included, right? This question is about seeing how aware you are of those environmental issues and how you integrate sustainable practices into your work.
So RoleCatcher says to avoid vague answers like, I care about the environment, and instead focus on specific actions we've taken to promote sustainability in our past roles.
Yeah, exactly. Did you start a recycling program or find ways to reduce water use? Maybe you explored alternative energy sources? Quantifying your impact is even better, like saying, I cut waste by 15%. That makes a bigger statement.
Those are the details that show you're not just talking the talk, but you're actually walking the walk, right?
And those actions could lead to some interesting follow-up questions, too. They might ask what challenges you faced implementing those practices or how you measured the impact of your work.
Makes sense. Be ready to share your knowledge and show how dedicated you are to environmental responsibility. Okay, next question. How do you ensure that metallurgical products meet customer specifications and requirements? This is all about keeping the customer happy, right? Making sure what you produce aligns with what they need.
Exactly. This question is about your attention to detail, your communication, and how you solve problems, especially when those requirements are super specific.
So RoleCatcher suggests outlining your process for understanding and meeting those specifications. Do you start with a really close review of what they need? Do you have a way to communicate with customers throughout the production process? Sharing those steps shows you're organized and customer-focused.
Yeah, and it's also good to have an example ready of a time you had to go above and beyond to meet a tough customer request. It shows how flexible you are and that you're dedicated to exceeding expectations.
Right, that makes sense. And of course, they might ask, how do you handle situations where customer specs clash with what's possible in production? Or tell me about a time you had to manage customer expectations.
Be ready to show off your diplomacy and problem-solving skills there.
All right, on to question number 8. How do you ensure that metallurgical processes comply with regulatory requirements, such as safety and environmental standards? Can't forget about the rules and ethics, right?
Definitely not. This question is about making sure you understand the regulations, that you're committed to following them, and that you stay up to date on any changes.
So RoleCatcher recommends highlighting specific things we've done to ensure compliance, like conducting regular audits, implementing safety programs, or even just staying on top of those environmental regulations.
Oh, and don't forget, any certifications or training you have in safety or environmental management. Those credentials show you're the real deal when it comes to compliance.
Good point. They might also ask, tell me about a time you spotted a potential compliance issue and how you dealt with it. Or how do you stay informed about changes in those requirements?
Be ready to share those experiences and show how vigilant you are about compliance.
Wow, we've gone through a lot of questions. It feels like I've already gotten a crash course in process metallurgy interview prep.
That's the power of a deep dive, right? But before we move on, let's talk about something else important for interview success. Understanding the typical career path for a process metallurgist.
Right. Knowing those different stages and what's expected at each level can help you talk about your goals during the interview.
RoleCatcher outlines 4 main stages: junior process metallurgist, senior process metallurgist, and principal process metallurgist. Think of it like a roadmap for your career.
I like that. And RoleCatcher even gives real-world examples for each stage. It's like getting a sneak peek into the future.
Exactly. Let's say you're a junior process metallurgist. You could say something like, with my background in metallurgy, I'm eager to use my lab skills and data analysis knowledge to help senior metallurgists optimize processes and run experiments.
Then, as you move up to process metallurgist, you can highlight your growing responsibilities, like I've led small project teams, implemented process improvements, and even helped develop new techniques.
And as a senior process metallurgist, you show off your leadership skills and how you've made a difference. I've led big projects, mentored junior colleagues, and made things way more efficient and sustainable.
And finally, as a principal process metallurgist, you're at the top, setting the direction for the whole field. You could say, I've shaped the company's metallurgical vision, encouraged innovation, and mentored a new generation of leaders.
These examples really help you see where your career could go and to talk about your goals during the interview.
Okay, we've covered technical questions, behavioral questions, and the career path. Now, let's talk AI. How can RoleCatcher's AI tools help me take my interview prep even further?
Great question. Technology can be a huge help in your job search. RoleCatcher has 2 main AI-powered features: CV resume tailoring and feedback on interview practice.
Okay, I'm interested. Let's break those down. First up, AI-powered CV resume tailoring. How does that work?
It's like having your own CV resume expert. You just upload your CV resume and the job description, and RoleCatcher's AI analyzes both. Then it suggests specific changes to your CV resume, making sure it highlights the skills and experience that matter most for that job.
So it's not just making it look good, it's about making it fit the role perfectly. That's smart.
Right. And this is crucial nowadays because a lot of companies use those automated systems to filter applications. Using AI to tailor your CV resume helps you get past those systems and actually land an interview.
Wow, that's a game changer. What about AI feedback for practicing interviews? How does that work?
Here's where you get to practice your answers and get feedback from an AI coach. You pick from a bunch of common questions, record your answers, and RoleCatcher's AI analyzes them. It gives you feedback on what you say, how you say it, even your body language.
So it's like a mock interview, but with the power of AI giving you insights. That's cool.
Exactly. And you can practice as much as you want, fine-tuning your answers until you feel confident and ready to nail the real interview.
This is amazing. It's like having a whole team of career coaches helping me out, all thanks to RoleCatcher's AI.
Now let's circle back to those soft skill questions we talked about earlier. Remember, technical skills are only part of the story. You got to be able to work well with others, communicate clearly, and show that you can lead. All of that is super important for any process metallurgist.
Okay, bring on those soft skill questions. I'm ready to show that I'm more than just a technical expert. I'm a team player and a great communicator, too. Okay, let's dive into those soft skill questions. I'm ready to show I'm not just a technical whiz, but also a team player and a great communicator.
Awesome. Let's start with a classic teamwork question. Something like, describe a time you had to work with a team to achieve a goal. What was your role, and how did you contribute to this success?
The teamwork question, it's in almost every interview.
Yeah, it's a staple for a reason. Process metallurgy relies on collaboration. Employers want to see that you can work effectively with others, communicate well, and be part of a shared vision.
Okay, so how should I approach this question?
The STAR method is your go-to here. Situation, task, action, result. Set the scene, describe what you were responsible for, explain the actions you took to help the team succeed, and finally, highlight the positive outcome.
And RoleCatcher really stresses picking a specific example that shows off those teamwork skills.
Exactly, yeah. Don't just say, I'm a good team player. Tell a story that shows you can collaborate, communicate, and solve problems as part of a team.
Okay. I'm thinking back to a research project in the university lab. We had a tight deadline to analyze a new alloy and present our findings at a conference.
Perfect. Sounds like a great example. Now, think about your specific role in the project. What did you do to contribute to the team's success? Did you lead the data analysis? Did you make sure everyone was communicating? Or maybe you helped resolve conflicts?
I was in charge of coordinating the experiments, making sure everyone stayed on track, and then putting our findings together for the presentation. It was definitely stressful at times, but we got it done.
Nice. Now you gotta weave those details into a good star story. You could say something like, in my final year of university, our research team had to analyze a new alloy and present our work at a big conference. As the experiment coordinator, I had to make sure the experiments ran smoothly, that everyone was on top of their tasks, and that we created a clear presentation. We had some bumps along the way, like equipment breaking down and, those tight deadlines, but we worked together and overcame those obstacles. We ended up giving a successful presentation and got great feedback on our research.
That sounds pretty impressive. I can see how it shows teamwork, communication, and problem-solving skills.
Exactly. And be ready for follow-up questions. They might ask about the challenges you faced working with the team or what you learned from the experience.
All right, I'm taking notes. What's the next soft skill question we need to conquer?
How about this? Describe a time when you had to explain a complex technical concept to someone without a technical background. How did you make sure they understood?
Ooh, that's a good one. Especially in process metallurgy, we work with people from all sorts of backgrounds, like folks from other departments, clients who aren't metallurgists, maybe even the general public.
Exactly. This question is testing your ability to break down those communication barriers to make technical stuff easy to grasp for anyone.
RoleCatcher suggests using things like analogies, visuals, or real-world examples to simplify things. It's about adjusting your communication to fit your audience.
Exactly. Think about a time when you had to explain something technical to a non-technical person. Maybe you presented research to a community group, or maybe you had to walk a client through a manufacturing process.
Oh, I remember having to explain metal fatigue to a group of investors who were thinking about funding a new project. Not the easiest concept to explain.
That's perfect. How did you make that concept clear to them? Did you use visuals, analogies? Did you check to make sure they were following along?
I definitely avoided all the technical jargon and tried to keep it simple. I even made a visual using a spring to show how repeated stress can lead to cracks, and eventually the spring breaks.
Great. Now turn that into a star story, you could say. I once had to explain metal fatigue to some investors who were interested in funding a project. I knew using technical terms wouldn't work, so I compared metal fatigue to bending a paperclip back and forth until it breaks. I even used a spring to show them visually how repeated stress can cause cracks and eventually make the spring fail. I made sure they were understanding throughout the presentation, and they seemed really engaged, even asking good questions. By the end, they had a good grasp of the concept and how it applied to the project.
That example shows I can explain complex things simply, adjust my communication style, and make sure people really get it.
Yep. And be ready for those follow-ups. They might ask about other strategies you use to communicate technical info to non-technical people, or what you do if someone just doesn't get it.
Okay, I'm ready for anything. What's the last question we need to tackle?
It's not really a question, but it's when the interviewer asks, do you have any questions for us?
Oh yeah, that one. It can feel like a trick question sometimes.
It can, but it's actually a great chance to shine. It's your opportunity to show you're genuinely interested in the job, the company, and the industry. Plus, you can gather information to help you decide if you get offered the position.
RoleCatcher has a bunch of strategic questions to ask in an interview. They say to focus on questions that show you're curious, that you understand the company and their goals, and that you're dedicated to professional growth.
Great points. You could ask about the company culture, the team's projects and challenges, or even the opportunities for professional development.
I also like to ask about the company's commitment to sustainability and innovation. Those are things I'm passionate about. I want to work for a company that values them too.
Those are great questions. And don't forget to ask about the next steps in the hiring process, like when you'll hear back and if they need anything else from you. Asking those logistical questions shows you're organized and thinking ahead.
This deep dive has been incredible. I feel so much better prepared for those process metallurgist interviews now.
Remember, practice makes perfect. The more you research, practice your answers, and fine-tune your approach, the more confident you'll feel walking into that interview.
And I'm definitely going to use those AI tools. RoleCatcher's CV, resume tailoring, and interview practice feedback are game changers.
Absolutely. As you start this exciting career journey, think about this. Process metallurgy is always evolving to meet the needs of a changing world. So, how will you contribute to that evolution? It's something to consider as you prepare for your interviews and beyond.
That's a great question to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We're rooting for you.